Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Tax Hacks podcast. I am your host, Trevor Laparla, back again here with Kevin Brunner. I can't seem to get away with him. Kevin, how are we doing?
Doing good. It's Tuesday afternoon.
Tuesday afternoon. It's a
Good
pretty
week.
good day. Good week so far. Not as humid. Last week was kind of ugly, but it's turned out okay so far this week, luckily.
Yeah. You're right. It's nice.
Well, last time, for those of you, if it's your first time here, welcome. Take a couple steps back, hop into our last podcast we have. It was a part two. There's a two-part series. I'm sorry. The first part was about life insurance. We kind of went into some details about that, the different styles of life insurance. And the second episode was the OPM strategy. That was an extension of that. So make sure to check those two out before we get into the installment sale trust process. But regardless, first time here, welcome. Glad to have you guys here. Today, we're going to go over the installment sale trust. Basically, Kevin's going to go over everything. He is the expert. I am the number one learner pretty much in the show. So Kevin's going to go over everything here, and he'll start you guys off with that today. So Kevin, if you give me a little bit of a 2-minute snippet of the IST, the installment sale trust, and we'll branch out from there.
Well, the installment sale trust, we have it on good authority from Ernst & Young retired attorneys who they created it in 71 or 72 at Ernst & Young when it was still called Ernst & Ernst. It wasn't even called Ernst & Young until about 86. And they created it so their own partners could exit and defer the tax on the sellback of the partnership. So when they retired. And then they started using it for existing clients that would sell their business or sell real estate or sell other assets. We've used it for everything from a portfolio of medical patents a gentleman owned. I did a 7-kilo ruby. It wasn't gem quality, but it's worth a lot of money. I've only done one piece of artwork, and we're coming up on 20 years now. One piece of artwork, and it sold for $5 million. And I thought the frame was worth more than the painting. Ugliest painting you ever saw. I mean, if it was a Jackson Pollock, you'd understand that modern art, right? It wasn't even that. It was just looked like a third grader. Sold for $5 million. And you know, this attorney had owned it for forever, and the wife said you can't bring it home. He was retiring. And the staff said get that out of the conference room, take it home with you. So we had to sell it. We did a over $20 million coin and stamp collection. We've done a lot of real estate. About 70% of our transactions are business owners that are selling. You know, in real estate, you can 1031 exchange, and real estate investors like to stay in real estate even if it's not a good idea. It's what they know, right? So, but a business owner, he's got nowhere to go. I mean, the installment sale trust works great for real estate. It's a better deal than a 1031. But a business owner, he's got nothing. He's just got to pay the tax. And if you live in a state like California or New York or Illinois or a lot of states, if you add the state and the federal tax together on the gains taxes, and then you got to add back in accelerated depreciation you've taken. That truck you bought, you wrote it off in 1 or 2 years. But now you got to recover that because you still own it, right? That accelerated depreciation, you can lose half of a transaction just to taxes. So a lot of small business owners literally can't afford to sell. They'd like to, they can't afford. There's not enough money left over on the other end. So what they'll do is they'll carry back a note against the business. And that's when, 5 years down the road, you get that Chapter 11 notice. The guy you're carrying a note against, is filed, right? So the problem with carrying back a note that way is you have all the downside risk, but none of the upside potential. If he buys that business and doubles it, you get none of that. But if he halves it, boy, you get some of that, right? So the installment sale trust just takes all those things off the table. It defers all the tax. It's a solid program, 20 years, no audits. We get letters from the IRS. I've had clients get letters. So they're always prompted by the CPA didn't fill out the forms correctly. So we fill out the forms for them to prevent that from happening. It's always something like that. We respond to the letter. We never hear back from the IRS. They're not even interested in auditing. It's a very straightforward, simple program. Now, I will warn you, you start hitting Google, there are about a dozen copycats of the old program out there. They use other names for it. A couple of them are actually on the IRS Dirty Dozen list, like a monetized installment sale. Don't do it. Don't do it. They're working their way through all those people, auditing them one by one by one. And I know a financial advisor in the Bay Area that's going to be bankrupted from lawsuits because he had all these clients that did a monetized installment sale. You can only do monetized installment sale if it's agricultural product or land. There's a specific exclusion for that. Nobody else can do it. There are people getting away with it, but the IRS is just, waiting to audit. They're working their way through the list, There's a couple other companies have similar names. They use a different trust structure that benefits the trustee and the advisors. And the client's none the wiser. Even the client's CPAs and attorneys don't figure that out till 10 years down the road when most of your money's gone. All right. We still use the traditional, very simple installment sale trust model exactly as we were taught by the attorneys. There's no reason to do all these other things. And doing it our way keeps all your fees and expenses very low because we don't have all these other fingers in the pie. So it's as simple as we create a trust. There's no commingling. It's a unique trust with unique operating agreement. It's a Delaware trust. So we're using a standard model, tried and true, tested for an incredibly long time. You transfer the assets into the trust. The trust is what sells them to the final buyer. At close of escrow, the cash comes back into the trust. And there's no taxes due because there was no taxable event until you receive income from the trust. And we provide the fiduciary trustee services to make sure everything stays compliant. And we do all of it for less than your advisor charges you to manage your retirement account. I mean, all in, everything. It's cheaper than that. So, and honestly, for us, it's wash, rinse, repeat. The documents are literally fill in the blank because everybody gets all the benefits. We don't make you negotiate for these little benefits like our competitors do. Everybody gets everything up front, even if it's a benefit you didn't ask for it, because it doesn't cost anything to be in there, right? And then we have a whole series of banks that were on their trust platform, like City National Bank and a host of others. They've vetted us. We have a whole series of insurance carriers that insure the principal in the trust. We have a whole series of law firms like Armstrong Teasdale or Lathrop GPM, two of the top 5 tax attorney firms in the nation. They both got over 700 attorneys on staff. Their boards have reviewed us, our program, our documents, and they represent us. So you can't get better than that. You really can't. The level of endorsements that we have.
Great. And I know you mentioned a couple things in there about training your CPA, stuff like that. What do you do if, like I said, attorney, CPA, whoever isn't as familiar with this process and you're like, hey, I'm a business owner and I want to use it, but said CPA is not familiar, said attorney is not familiar, and they, are like, oh, I don't know about it. What do you do there?
Well, first off, remember, if you ask somebody a question, you're probably going to get an answer. So are you discussing cardiology with your dentist? There's a metaphor for you. He's a good dentist. He cleans your teeth twice a year. He made that crown fit just right. Anybody has crowns understands that problem. He's a great dentist. What are you bugging him about cardiology for? It's not what he does. But no, your CPA and we will train the CPA. Now, egos get involved and they always want to be the expert at something and they don't want to tell you they don't know. Let us train the CPA. He's got 5 more clients just like you. I've got a self-interest in wanting to train your CPA. On average, they have about 5 more clients just like you that I'm going to get later. He's going to find out that this is good. It's good for his clients, and I get referrals that way. So we have an interest in training we have a self-interest in training your CPA and your attorney. So it's a niche thing that they've just not done. There's some forms that get filed in the tax return that we even fill them out for the CPAs now to make sure they're done correctly. Because we had to go back and file some amended returns for some clients because the CPA didn't do it correctly. But, your dentist went to medical school. He's probably not good at, operating on the left ventricle of your heart. This is not what he does. It's a different medical school. It doesn't make him a bad dentist. So it's almost not fair hitting them with this without them spending time with us. And we have an 8-hour training course for them. We have a lot of due diligence we send them. And they're going to want to vet us, but we've been vetted so many times. 40 plus financial firms have vetted us. We're AAA rated firms. A dozen banks and their legal divisions and trust divisions have vetted us both personally, professionally, our program, our documents. So we don't mind. We have all the stuff to send to them. What we want the client, though, the business owner that's selling, or the person selling the asset, whatever it is, maybe it's a coin and stamp collection, maybe it's an apartment building because you just got a little tired of being a landlord. There's a due diligence process that we go through with you to educate you on how it works and everything else. Just spend the time. Spend the time to run the numbers. And maybe you'll do it, maybe you won't. Keep it in your back pocket. You and I were just talking earlier about what about that business owner who doesn't have a succession plan? What happens when that car runs the stop sign and T-bones him in the intersection? Now he's in the hospital and his wife's trying to figure out the succession plan, or the husband, if the situation's reversed. Or, I have a few people I spoke to that didn't make a decision, never developed a succession plan, and their widow is now my client. I helped clean up the mess. Don't do that to your family. So meet with us, put together a succession plan. Don't pull the trigger. You don't have to pull the trigger, but have one in place and run the numbers and find out what it is. The other thing we do with the installment sale trust is we put together an income plan for you. We review that. I used to train advisors in income planning. Income planning is different than asset management and just saying if you pull 4% every year and I manage the investments, you'll be fine. Maybe, maybe not. Depends on sequence of the market's returns, right? Well, I used to teach an 8-hour class twice a month, 10 months a year, did it for 4.5 years for a brokerage in San Diego that has 22,000 financial advisors. So I taught an income planning class, an 8-hour class. I got 8 hours continuing education for it. So in a couple hours, once I have the numbers, I can have an income plan together for you. See, the question is, once you sell the business, where's my income coming from there? And a lot of business owners don't sell because they don't have that answer. They don't have that worked out. I'll do it later. Business is good. It'll be better next year. Business owners are notorious optimists. And if you weren't an optimist, you won't succeed as an entrepreneur, right? And that's where that endless optimism, next year will be better, that's where it comes back and bites them in the backside. Because they don't put those things together. They don't have that answer for what do I do the day after I don't come to work anymore. And the other thing that happens is they hang on to the business too long. It's time for new management. Your paradigms are just too fixed. And they end up just riding the business down. And eventually they sell it when it's not worth much, or it gets sold by the wife when they get, they get carried out boots first, right? You die with your boots on, as the cowboys say. It would have been better to die with your loved ones around you after a nice camping trip to the Grand Canyon with the grandkids, right? See? So by putting together a succession plan and using the numbers from the installment sale trust, it gives you clarity as to where you are in your business. And there's a whole host of other things we bring to that conversation that will be good for the business.
Got it. So obviously succession planning is huge with that. And like you said, it's tough for a lot of people. They want to hold on to it for so long, and you want to be, like I said, optimistic about, hey, next year will be better. Next year will be better. We'll make more. This will happen or that'll happen. We'll get that client, this client. And when you get older, that clock's ticking, you don't know what's going to happen. And being somebody, younger myself, I can't imagine just walking in, or somebody even younger than me. Imagine there's no mom involved, or maybe mom got lost or dad got lost, or vice versa. And now it's going down to the kids. Like, imagine your kid being the succession plan, or in your case, your son being your succession plan. It's like, how would that even happen? Right. That's just so unrealistic. And it's really important to have that in place. But tapping onto that a little bit more too, I know you mentioned there's multiple aspects of the trust and things like that. How do you go about actually finding those numbers and getting those set numbers to see what your income plan, is going to be after you sell?
We do a determination of what the price of the business is. And there are standard models and standard multiples in the industry. In fact, there's a book that gets updated every year. It's about that thick, that business brokers use, and the numbers get updated. I owned a business brokerage for some time. I ran it for some time while the guy was off building his dream home on the East Coast, where he took his boat to the inner waterway there. He had a boat here, Southern California. And then it took him 2 years to convince me to buy the place. And then I owned it for about 2.5 years and sold it back to the international franchisor. So I managed at times over 40 business brokers. So I've seen thousands of transactions. I ended up with the place because I was helping the business brokers close deals that just weren't viable without me. All right. So that's why the owner wanted me in there. I saw him even go through a couple of franchise name changes. Same firm, just, different logo on the door, So I've watched these transactions. I can't tell you the number of times it's usually the wife is selling what's left because husband had a stroke or he's not with us anymore. Okay. So one case, they actually, he was on a fishing trip and the boat capsized. So he didn't have a plan for any of that. I had an apartment building owner who had a whole series of problems in Los Angeles apartment building. And I put together a whole plan for not only would he have more income from the trust, he'd have more appreciation of the trust assets than he was having in the building. I get a call about 3 years after I met with the guy, and he just quit returning my calls. And it's his widow. He'd been gone for a couple of months. She found my proposal in his top desk drawer. She had been an accountant at Boeing. She said, I've done the math. Had he sold to you and you gave this to him, we'd have made 50% more money every year. We'd have made a lot more money. Why didn't he do it? I said, because he was stubborn. She laughed. She goes, you're right. He was that. So now it was a good thing he was stubborn because that's what got him through the lean years of buying that apartment building and, over those years of doing all that. I'm not saying that's, are you stubborn or are you persistent? Right? Which is it? So his persistency became stubbornness, right? So I've seen these things happen time and time and time again. If your business has met with the professionals, you've put together this plan, if it's always positioned for sale, it runs leaner and runs better. So always have your business positioned for sale. So I think I answered your question.
Yeah, you absolutely did. And I mean, it's wild to hear that you've done, coin collections, paintings, businesses. It's just like just about anything you can push through the installment sale trust that's over a certain price, right? From what it sounds like.
I got to spend an afternoon with these white gloves on, these special gloves, going through the coins and stamps and some paper money. He had some, not ancient, but whatever you'd call it when it's a couple hundred years old, Japanese paper money. He had some colonial stamps that were hand canceled. He had an Austrian coin that there's only 5 left.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
The rest are the 4 are in a museum in Austria. He owned one because they were silver coins and they had been restruck with a different person on it. And then that guy didn't last very long. So all the coins got restruck, but there are 5 known to exist that never got restruck. All right. And they belong in a museum, right? He had one that wasn't, and I think the Austrian government would like to have it back. It was from the Habsburg. It was from the Habsburg dynasty, right? And so he had those octagon gold pieces that my understanding was you're not actually supposed to privately own those because those weren't actually put into circulation. So he had all those things. He even had one of the upside down airplane stamps where the airplane was upside down because they ran it through, with the second color incorrectly, right? Those were supposed to all be destroyed, but some of them made it out the door. So it was an error. It was an amazing collection. It didn't all sell to one buyer. It sold at an auction. Different parts of it sold to different people. It took a couple of days for it all to sell. The patents. The gentleman had a portfolio of medical patents for medical devices. I learned a lot about patents and medical devices going through that transaction. So it's interesting. I liked business brokerage. I liked owning a business brokerage. I loved meeting all the different business owners. The number of people I met that told you stories about how they came here with literally $100 in their pocket. The one guy was a janitor and was allowed to sleep in the back of the building until he saved up enough money to get a place.
Wow.
The owner let him sleep there. He eventually ended up owning the place. Yeah.
It's pretty sweet.
I know, yeah. So you run into these stories of these people that literally made a shirt out of a buttonhole. And it was inspiring. It was very inspiring to meet these people.
Yeah.
So it's, and the fact that I got to help them make sure that this all went into a trust that replaced their income, deferred all those taxes, earned interest on all those taxes that would have been otherwise lost. And now it goes to the kids, the grandkids, the great-grandchildren. One gentleman was adamant. He wanted to make sure that no future heir of his ever had student debt, student loan debt. He was adamant about that. And that was part of what he wrote into his plan. So he'll be dead and gone, and somebody will getting their university paid for. So
I love that. So you can basically write inside your trust what you or how you want to have the money allocated when you're gone, correct? Right. So in his case, he wanted it to be, hey, maybe once you get to college, then now you have access to those funds to put towards whatever school you go to, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Sweet. And what's the ideal kind of like owner? I know we talked about it setting up the retirement plan for after you sell, but let's say I'm 40. I'm 40. And I did really well, and I'm selling my business now. It's a good time for me to get out for whatever reason it is. I sell for $5 million. Would the IST be a great way for me to go into that and then go into something else, or how do the investments work inside? Can I kind of choose in there, or?
I keep a cheat sheet in my top desk drawer. So you're in California, so you would lose 36% off the top. Plus, you would recover whatever you've not used up of accelerated depreciation.
Just a little bit, not that much, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. So the government makes sure government's necessary, but they act like we need them, and they tax the hell out of your whole life. They make everything difficult. I'm not saying we don't need regulations. What I'm saying is they don't need to be that difficult. They make everything more expensive. Their solution to every problem is more paperwork, right? And then people reading the paperwork, they don't know the first thing about what the paperwork's about, but they're going to tell you how to do it, right? So you bite your tongue, right? So, and then when you go to exit, they want one more piece. They're like that bad business partner you just can't get rid of, and didn't contribute anything, but he gets a share, right? So what we do is we create a situation where there just isn't a taxable event. There's no taxes due. We're not avoiding it. We're not playing a shell game. We're not doing a step transaction. We're not doing a sham transaction. We're not doing any of those other things. And it allows you at 40 to say, this is a good time for me to exit, maximize my price. Could I do better if I stuck around till I was 50? Maybe. How many guys, though, worked hard from 25 to 40, exited, did it well, then went on to build something else after that? Elon Musk, PayPal, right?
True. Good example, yeah.
See, look what he went on to do after that. So now that's an outlier. I mean, come on, it's Elon Musk, right?
Yeah.
So he's one of the few billionaires I'd actually like to meet. No, so you're 40, you want to sell, we can maximize that. You get an income stream while you go start your next thing. We've had a lot of clients that were in their 40s, late 30s, 40s, who exited, took the income stream, started their next venture. And it's a lot easier to start that next venture if you already have an income stream. You don't need to be a drag. You don't need income from the business you're starting.
Sure, I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's a great point. It's all coming.
It's a lot easier on the family. Yeah. No, so I started a business in the 90s. I went from one business to another. And for about 3 years, we ate a lot of spaghetti. Kids liked it. We took vacations to San Diego instead of Hawaii. We made that Chevy Astrovan. Remember those Chevy Astrovans? I changed my own oil and made that van last a little longer.
Yeah.
Now then the business got over the hump and everything was profitable. Everything was fine, right? Well, if I'd have exited differently, I didn't know about this back then. If I'd have exited the previous business differently, if I'd have had this, we wouldn't have been so difficult to go from one business to the next. So I did something similar to this in the mid 90s when I sold a bunch of rental properties I owned. and rolled that into another investment. I now know that had I been audited for that year, I would have lost. The attorney and the CPA that put the whole thing together for me didn't do it correctly.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're good men. I still know them both today. Thank God I wasn't audited. See? So there's a lot of people out there doing similar things to this that just haven't been audited. All right. Or they passed an audit because the auditor's not that sharp. Thank God a lot of IRS auditors really aren't very sharp.
Yeah.
So, but it's changing because now they have AI. They have AI software at the IRS that scans returns and flags for things and stuff like that. So going forward, we're in a different world now. One of the other benefits, though, of using our installment sale, one, it's proven. It's simple. It follows the tax code exactly. I mean, the IRS doesn't audit us because there's nothing to audit in our transactions. They're just not interested in auditing it. But it also gives you asset protection. Things are getting more and more litigious all the time. So with an installment sale trust, you now have asset protection as well.
So if you get divorced, can she go after it?
Yeah, because you funded it with joint funds.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So, yeah. But let's face it, she put up with you in the lean years. Maybe she deserves half.
Yeah, right.
I don't begrudge, if my, God, I hope to God my wife doesn't leave. But if she did and asked for half, I wouldn't argue about it. She's been with me a long time. So she wants half, it's hers. So,
yeah.
But I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, it would be community property at that point.
Of
So,
course.
yeah, there would be. But if an outside person decided to sue you, all right, let's say you're in a really terrible car accident, and each car sues the one behind them, right? You know how that goes. And the lawyers all get involved and stuff, and your car insurance doesn't cover enough of it. And now they want more, right? They can't touch this. And by the way, we will train you how to asset protect everything. If you as a client want to go down the road, we'll show you how to be judgment proof, totally judgment proof. It's like suing me is a waste of time. Even if you win, you can't claim. So I practice what I preach. Even if you did win, I might not even spend a lot of money fighting. I'll let you win, frame it, and hang it on the wall. Good luck. So right. So we'll teach you how to be that way. By the way, one of my mentors taught me a long time ago. The kryptonite to lawyers is to arrange your finances in a way that even if they win, they can't get paid.
And they don't want to do
it.
it.
They lose all interest in doing anything about it. That was a mentor of mine from the early 90s. So, and we're not telling you to skip out on your obligations. We're just telling you we do live in a very litigious state and a very litigious society. And if you have those kind of protections, it just wards off the people that are trying to get a free lunch. So,
yeah. Well, great. Thank you so much. I guess to wrap things up, it sounds like you get asset protection, you get, legacy building, financial planning in a way, income planning, essentially from the trust, tax deferral. Your taxes essentially become an asset rather than a liability now, which is a great adjustment, right? Imagine paying, instead of that 2.5 million or how much you're paying up taxes now, it's 2.5 million in your account. That's getting invested to whatever you guys invest that into. So sounds like a great option for you to exit into. Kevin, thanks again for coming in. I appreciate the time. Always a great time for me to learn. Every single time I get something out of it, and I love it. So,
all right.
But for everybody else, thanks again for listening in. We'll catch you guys on the next time.